welcome your hosts of That Startup Show, Benjamin Law and Ray Johnston.
Everybody, I'm Ray Johnston. This is Benjamin Law, and welcome to the spookiest ever episode of That Startup Show. Ooh.
This episode, we're going to look at ghost tech, a world where AI, cybersecurity, and chatbots all work undercover without our knowledge, harvesting our data and building simulations of ourselves to be used in theme parks.
I ain't afraid of no ghost tech.
That's right, folks. We're going to be busting out those Ghostbuster references. We're on the cutting edge here tonight.
We're talking about the Internet of Things. For instance, imagine if those old phone boxes we just emerged from were connected to the web.
Come on. First there's internet fridges, and now you're telling me they're going to be putting the internet on phones? Ludicrous.
Look, an extra spooky thing about AI chatbots is that they're designed to simulate what humans would sound like if humans were devoid of all feeling.
Like my ex when he asked for the love fern back.
I hope you kept the partiality fern.
Oh, you know.
You'll find a lot of ghost tech in cybersecurity applications.
If you forget your password, bots ask you questions like your first pet's name. I now regret naming my dog Password.
And did you know, interestingly enough, hackers have the most success with companies where employees are overworked and underpaid.
So basically every single startup. Bit of advice, maybe don't write back to that Nigerian prince.
Hey, we make a very cute couple.
I'm sorry, Your Highness. I hope your investments have been fruitful.
But as AI advances, are we all going to live forever as androids, like in Black Mirror?
Only in the real world, it's less like bars of fluid that turn you into a simulation of you and more like an endless best of your Facebook feed chatbot that you can pretend you're still cracking wise and reminiscing about that fancy dress party in 2008.
Or an immortal troll. You know how I said I wasn't afraid of no ghosts?
Yes.
I've changed my mind. I don't want an AI virtual version of me out there. What if it sends out that perfect tweet I've always dreamed of?
Well, I'm sorry, but it's bound to at some point between now and eternity.
Defeated by virtual me, my ultimate nemesis.
Actually looking forward to Virtual Ray.
What are you saying?
Just, it'd be interesting. I'm not saying I want you to die.
Kind of sounds like you are. Or is that virtual Ben talking?
You'll never know.
Well, better AI versions of ourselves and ghosts may be everywhere.
Just so long as it's not clowns in drains.
We'll float down here, Ben. But we've got a room full of excellent quality live humans with us here tonight. The first of which is tonight's correspondent, Sarah Moran from Girl Geek Academy. Who's haunting our audience tonight, Sarah?
Thanks, Ray and Ben. Now, what we're doing tonight in the Girl Geek Academy labs is we're building our own reality. And we're going to start with augmented reality, which means taking reality and making it that bit better, like the second Ghostbusters. Tonight I have with me here Joe from Sharebox. Welcome, Joe. We're building stuff in this space, and it's like Lego, but that little bit different. Joe, what on earth is Sharebox?
So Sharebox is actually an augmented reality application where you can build any kind of AR art that you like, as long as it's little blocks, but you can actually make that persistent and contextual in space. So you can make a little AR art and you can leave it here and then someone else can come and log in and actually contribute and add to it.
Great, so it's like Minecraft, Lego, all sorts of building, Tetris, but we can work together. So how many people, how many friends could I invite along and play together?
As many as you like, yes.
Yeah, but like I have a lot of friends.
Everyone in the audience could download it and they could all contribute to this space right here as well.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to go for 100 people, so I'll just hit up the audience, see who wants to join me, and in the meantime, back to you two.
Thanks, Sarah. We're talking ghost tech, the unseen world of things on the other side of the computer screen. Chatbots, cybersecurity, and internet-enabled devices. Google Assistants are now sticking natural turns of speech, like ums, into their speech synthesis, so you really believe it's a person.
When my Google Assistant says I assume it's because the Wi-Fi's dropped out. because it's Australia. Though I did replace Siri's voice with the sound of a British butler, so I can go back to asking Jeeves again. So much more polite than that horrible Bing. Is that racist? Now, here to help us peek under the bonnet are two experts in the field.
Our first guest is more than an expert in cybersecurity. As CEO of Cyber, she has been committed to establishing a cybersecurity growth centre to position Australia as a key centre for cybersecurity research and innovation. Would you please give a warm welcome to Michelle Price?
Thank you, thank you.
A friend.
I have brought a friend, I have indeed. This is Cyberoo. Cyberoo is Cyber's mascot. So I feel like Cyberoo and Uniroo might just make friends with each other.
Oh, lovers. Ooh. That wasn't in the script. Our second guest is an authority on reality, whether virtual, augmented or mixed. That's all types except actual reality. In real life, he's the founder and CEO of Foria, and his mission is to transport you to places in different realities. Please welcome Trent Clues de Castella.
Good to be here. Feels a little bit surreal. A little bit like a simulation, I think.
Are we here or not?
I don't know.
Don't make me think too deeply. Okay, so first up, a question for you both. Ghost tech and AI is creeping into our lives, often in ways that we're not even really aware of. So the big one, are we headed for human obsolescence? And will we even know if it's happened?
I love that. So yes, we are, and no, we're not going to become obsolete. I don't think we will anyway, but I think we are colliding. We're heading towards that collision of the, I guess, the technology with humans. And I remember sort of saying as a kid, I can't wait to have the USB port in the back of my head. Well, isn't that sort of now obsolete? So, but I don't think we'll get taken out of the equation. I think we'll have bits put in us, but I don't think you can take out the emotion of a human. I don't think you can replicate that.
What about you, Trent? What are your thoughts on this?
It's definitely a thought and a question that keeps me up at night, actually. I think we're already in many ways a little bit obsolete. We like to use these tools to make our lives a little bit easier, and so I'd like to think optimistically that we can leverage, a new tool set to help us empower and augment the things that we're already doing that we consider humans. So hopefully technology and humanity collide in a really positive way for good, fingers crossed, otherwise it was a good fight.
So augmented but not replaced.
That's it, enhanced.
Nice.
Now we're going to play a game with you both called Hacker or Oscar. We're going to read some plausible and not so plausible scenarios, and you need to tell us whether they are actual news stories or plots from movies.
But first we get to test our buzzers, which is my favourite part. Trent? Michelle? Excellent. All right, so are you ready to play Hacker or Oscar?
Ready.
Is this a real cybersecurity breach or a plotline from a movie? A thrill-seeking young hacker gains unauthorised access to dozens of software company systems and even hacks the phone company. After a 2.5-year manhunt, the FBI arrest him and convince a judge that he could launch nuclear weapons by whistling into the telephone. After being released from prison, he becomes a systems security expert for the FBI. Hacker or Oscar? Press your buzzers when you know the answer.
Hacker.
And the answer is hacker. This is the story. You did good. Straight off the bat. It's the story of Kevin Mitnick, which was the basis for the heavily fictionalised movie Trackdown. I wish you could launch nukes by whistling. I'd feel fine if it was to the tune of The End of the World as We Know It.
I see what you did there. Speaking of nukes, a high school student hacks into the American nuclear missile system and accidentally sets off a computer simulation that leads to potential nuclear war with Russia. Hacker or Oscar?
Ooh.
I'm going to
Come on,
take a
buzz
risk here.
Okay.
Oscar.
That's a movie. That's correct.
Yes!
It's the plot of War Games, starring Matthew Broderick in 1983. Of course, it's fictional. In real life, it might be the Russians doing the hacking and the Americans getting ready to go nuclear.
All right, next up. A group called the Guardians of Peace hack a movie studio to prevent the distribution of a film satirising the dictator of a totalitarian state. The Guardians release thousands of embarrassing internal emails, leak unreleased films, and threaten terror attacks on cinemas. Hacker or Oscar?
Ooh.
Hacker.
That is real, even though it is about a movie. So Sony was hacked in 2014 to stop them releasing the comedy The Interview. Apparently, Kim Jong-un doesn't find movies about his assassination funny.
And I hear he only gave it half a star. Next question. A security software mogul moves to the Central American jungle to start a biotech company. He starts hanging out with gangsters and ends up fleeing the country after being implicated in his neighbour's murder. He then uses his notorious return to the US as a platform to run for president. Hacker or Oscar?
Gotta be Oscar.
No, that's real. That was John McAfee, creator of McAfee security software. Sounds like he definitely needed to keep his antivirus up to date. Hey!
All right, hacker or Oscar? A city on the verge of bankruptcy due to the decline of the auto industry outsources its policing to a private corporation. The company puts cybernetically enhanced cops on the street to restore peace to the violent, crime-ridden metropolis. Hacker or Oscar?
Oscar.
That is a movie. It's RoboCop. But in the act of life imitating art, the city of Detroit did go bankrupt in 2013. We are yet to see cyborg cops, though. We only have 10 seconds to comply.
And that's how the game ends. The scores are absolutely stunning. I wish I could share them with you, but they're triple encrypted.
Now it's time for the pitch ring.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Pitch Ring, where we're going to meet 3 up-and-coming entrepreneurs, listen to their pitches and decide who goes to the grand finale, aka the Oscars of that startup show.
Not only that, tonight's successful pitcher will also take home the coveted prize, which proves they are the Australian version of the unicorn, the Uniroom.
Tonight, we've selected 3 brand new startups to pitch their companies to the panel.
The panel will be looking for originality, marketability, scalability, and their ability to have already planted the fact that they are a winner into our brains.
The pitch rules are simple. Rule number 1, you have 2 minutes. Rule 2, at 30 seconds, you're going to hear this sound. That's
There
where
it
it is. Rule number 3, a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. Bit of Asimov for you there, sci-fi fans.
The panel will then have an opportunity to give feedback to our contestants. And the first pitcher in tonight's pitch ring has managed to bend space and time with a project management platform more effective than intravenous caffeine. Please welcome Murat Baziov.
How many people here try to develop a website or mobile app? I worked as a project manager for years. My role was to translate between tech and non-tech people. And we know that developers live in their own time-space continuum, isn't it? That is why Adevi is here to help. Adevi is end-to-end app prototyping platform that produces source code and allows all teams to collaborate. In 2011, I founded an app development company here in Melbourne. You see, I came from non-IT background, but had a good exposure to project management. That made me question the processes I was employing in app development. Most of the time, the difficulty is not a technical complexity. There are 3 main problems. First, communication. Second, communication. And again, communication. They're all of different nature, so let me explain. First problem, when client approaches a software development team to start the project. Second problem, internal team communication within the software development team. Third problem, technology communication that's caused by fragmentation of the tools we employ throughout the process. A Debian solution removes communication problems across all three areas. It provides a knowledge-based system that expands from usage. It has a chatbot experience, learning algorithm to improve user experience. This results in saved time, resources, and money. It takes less than an hour to produce stable source code. It avoids iteration, and the output is a pixel-perfect prototype. It allows to test prototype in real life and to upgrade existing projects fast. It supports various user interfaces and has further scope to grow in automation. Today, we are reaching pre-launch stage. To complete a prototype, and we're engaging with universities and further with app development companies to learn from their feedback. The project is ready to scale technically. We have launched Marketplace to support commercial scalability. Software development, in general, holds lots of risks. We're on the journey to reduce them. We are looking for investors to partner to shape Adevi future. Visit us at adevi.io. Thank you.
Thank you, Murat. Michelle, let's start with you. Any questions about Adevi?
Well, of course, I have to ask the question whether or not you're thinking about security by design. How are you addressing how you protect the data within the platform?
So we're not going to disclose the project unique features of the prototypes that people are actually going to build through the platform. Mm-hmm. What we're going to do, there's a lot, we're going to learn from the repeatable patterns of between those projects. And that's what we're going to allow. And another stage we have a thought for further development, is apply a blockchain technology to actually protect intellectual property through the blockchain. Mm-hmm. But that's still in consideration.
Of course, very good.
What about you, Trent? Any questions about Adevi for Murat?
Yeah, good stuff. I guess my first question would be, is there any more specifics around the sort of real target market that you'd be looking to really work towards, and then maybe how big that market could potentially be?
Well, initially we focus on app development companies, because that's the problems actually that we experience as an app development company, and we really feel their pain. There is a further plans to grow for the technology and actually apply it to different areas. I'm not going to go too much in depth on that, but app development companies, but at the same time, it's a chatbot experience, so it's actually user-friendly. So, for example, freelancers or even general public have an idea, come to Adevi and try to create your project before you actually approach software developer.
Look forward to trying it out.
Thank you so much, Murat. Would you please join us in thanking Murat? Woo! Thank you.
And now it's time to check in with the Girl Geek Academy on the floor. How's reality shifting down there, Sarah?
We're down here on the floor with a different type of ghost tech. You can see it on the screen. We've got the very, very popular tilt brush. Now I've got Seb in our virtual reality world here. Seb, how on earth does this particular thing work?
Well, it's pretty amazing because it tracks both controllers in a 3D space, so it lets you have an organic relationship with digital art, which is kind of cool.
Awesome. And so, did you have to go to art school to do this, or?
I actually studied law.
Great. Awesome. So, accessible to anyone. So speaking of accessibility, I'm sort of ducking and weaving because you can't see me. When do you think we'll be able to have the tilt brush and other products without the goggles?
It actually, probably the closest thing to that got released just last week. It's called Magic Leap, and it essentially gives you the ability to bring a spatial interface into your reality and access it through a pair of goggles and a controller just like this.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to hang out in this virtual reality until I get time to magic leap on out of here. In the meantime, I'm throwing it back to you two.
Thanks, Sarah. And Mr. Squiggle. It's like a modern Mr. Squiggle.
Love it.
Love it.
Upside down.
Only old people remember that now. You're watching That Startup Show, or possibly a very good simulation. Possibly by Elon Musk.
I really hope not. Here's a fun fact. The name Elon Musk is actually short for elongated muskrat. He changed it when he was an angry teen. Now back to the picturing. It's like the Hunger Games, but are we fully catered? Let's find out from picture number 2. He's a man who's all about making the internet a fairer place. Please welcome Ben Flavel.
So you've probably all experienced the frustration that occurs when you try to buy something in high demand online, like a ticket to a concert or a sporting event, when thousands of other fans are trying to buy the same item. So access is granted to the luckiest or the person with the highest bandwidth, and it can also place a huge load on the server, leading to system crashes. It's just not fair. So what we do is we apply queuing theory into the online world. So queuing theory describes what makes it fair to line up in a physical queue. And the two main constructs are time and transparency. So the longer I spend in line, the more I deserve it, and I can see how long the line is, so I can determine whether it's worth my time. We just turn a length of time in a physical queue into moments in time online. So fair access holds your place in line, but it requires you to come back once a day and check in at a time of your choosing. The more accurately you check in, the further ahead you are in the queue. This is your demonstration of commitment. It's like camping out for days at the box office, only you don't need a sleeping bag. And it's built on a public blockchain, so it's completely transparent. We can also collect data and get users to promote and buy things during the check-ins. In fact, we already have an MVP, a proof of concept, and we own a patent on the process of gathering people into an online queue and then prioritising those people based on a predetermined activity. Not only did we prove that the process works and that users want to engage, we also found out that it was gamified in nature. Users just want to complete the perfect check-in. We also created over 2 minutes time with each user per check-in. So valuable one-on-one conversations. So Fair Access is the world's fairest online queuing system.
Do you have any questions, Trent?
I'm curious, like, how big can this go? Like, is it solely going to be within queuing, or do you see new opportunities on the horizon?
Well, we can use it as a marketing tool as well. So we can get users to promote during the check-ins, and there has to be an incentive though. So we could use money can't buy experiences. We can use access to the latest gadget. It's anywhere where demand outstrips supply. So yeah, it could be huge.
How about you, Michelle?
Yeah, I'm thinking that there's a couple of, in terms of the FAIR principle you've got there, I feel like all of those people out there that queue at government service outlets, have you thought about those kinds of things? The Centrelink shop front, for example?
Yes, actually, there was a suggestion for housing wait lists. In WA, I actually had a meeting with the minister over in WA to talk about this. So the rules would work differently, but obviously it's about getting the houses into the right hands.
So the tech is flexible enough to have the different use cases.
Absolutely.
Great.
Please join me in thanking Ben, everyone.
Now, Trent, Michelle, can we just now have a chat between ourselves about the exciting/terrifying future ahead of us?
Absolutely.
Great.
Now, earlier this year, it was discovered by cybersecurity experts that every Intel processor made in the last 10 years has a backdoor known as Spectre. Can we stop our devices from spying on us now and in the future?
Such a good question. So the answer is yes. Absolutely. I think there's two factors to that, and one is around making sure that we are thinking much more about cyber resiliency at the beginning. So we refer to that as secure by design. So thinking about cybersecurity at the beginning, which actually has lots of positive ramifications for things like privacy. But the other side of it is actually us humans, us lowly humans, actually caring a lot more about what we're using and how we use it. So absolutely Spectre was something that sort of almost brought the world to its knees because Intel has been so, I guess, successful in getting into most of the sort of mainstream devices that we know. But with around about 40 billion devices now floating around the planet, including up in the sky now, and that's not just satellites, there's things called drones now as well, delivering Mexican food to us. You know, there's a real need for us to be thinking about this in a much better way, and the solutions are already there to help us get there. We need to create the right kinds of incentives, both economically but also socially, to care more about building it in at the beginning.
Why do you think people don't care?
We want convenience. I think as humans, we just want it to happen super fast. And of course, the commercial imperative is to get to market as quickly as possible. And the cybersecurity part of the equation can be challenging, so it can slow things down. But that is also changing. It's getting quicker to apply security at the beginning rather than at the end. And I think actually at the end of the day, we need to remember that the cost of these compromises to everyone is so high now that we need to think about what the negative impact is of not doing something about it. And if we think about, for all of us here, what we share in common is that if we don't have internet connectivity, our lives have ended. You know, if we can't access our smartphone for more than 5 minutes, we feel like we're missing out or we can't function. Right through to people who actually have medical devices inside their bodies that literally do rely on that connectivity to stay alive. So I think that it's starting to change on the care factor, but we need to think about it constantly in different ways.
Nice.
It's amazing. I couldn't agree more. I think I definitely approach it in maybe a little bit more of a naive perspective. I've maybe given up a little bit of hope. I feel like it's, maybe I've got nothing to hide, but at the end of the day, I like to think that the applications and programs that are monitoring my behaviours are actually hopefully learning from my habits to help me live more efficiently. So if we think about wayfinding or how we can leverage this technology to help us make more informed decisions because it can provide it in a suggestive way in the future. So I'd like to think, hopefully, fingers crossed, no one takes advantage of my lack of Band-Aid sticking over my web camera, and yeah, we'll see how time goes.
Trent, you talk about having nothing to hide. Let's take that concept further. We're now seeing a world where facial recognition technology has resulted in this hyper-realistic world of video and news stories, these so-called deep fakes. So how do we protect our own identities in the future? And how do we make sure that we don't end up in deep fake porn with our faces being used against our will?
Wow.
This is Ben's deepest, darkest fears being exposed.
I mean, that's the most bizarre end of the spectrum, but we've already started to see videos where someone like Barack Obama is actually saying stuff realistically that he didn't actually say.
Definitely presents a lot of really interesting questions. Obviously, fake news has been a very pressing topic in today's big wide world, but I'd like to think, hopefully, through things like cryptocurrency or blockchain or smart contracts, we have a means to authenticate information, a way to verify that this content that is maybe attributed to you as an individual is actually sort of granted ownership in a way that you can make sure that it's not going to be exploited and used behind you in a blackmail perspective.
Is that authentication technology foolproof though, Michelle?
It's not, and I think it's important to remember that at the moment we don't have a silver bullet. And so when things are oversold as being silver bullets, we then become even more complacent, which is why I think, again, it comes back to that care factor. It's more about being resilient. So we say in the cybers, it's not if, it's when you're going to be compromised, whether that's at the individual level of your identity right through to whole nations, through things like elections or government services and things like that. So caring a bit more, I think, is so important to make sure that we are building the constructs that we prefer to have in place. If we're not caring, others will make the decisions for us, and they might not be the decisions that we want to have made for us. So that authentication is absolutely at the very core of everything that we need to do now, as well as making sure that we retain that curiosity that humans have. If it doesn't look just that little bit quite right, it's probably not. So ask the question, is it right? And that's why we know that Barack Obama was not actually himself in those videos because it wasn't just a little bit quite right. And at the moment, at least, the AI technology that we have available to us isn't smart enough, but is being built with all of these preconceptions in place. So I think that as long as we keep talking about it and we design what it is that we want these sets of technologies to do, and they are resilient, it's all about how we respond to when we have been compromised that's the most important. Don't shove it under the rug, you'll get found out, and it's far more scary when you get found out than if you actually front up and take responsibility for it.
Now, quantum computing, we're not quite there yet. We're getting closer every day. We're so close. But it's likely to be able to crack any form of encryption in the future. Like, obviously, anything now it would be able to take care of. But in the future as well, will we have to find something else that computers can't crack to protect our privacy?
Well, in my view, no. I think that, so right now, as much as we don't have quantum computing at commercialisable scale, we do have quantum encryption at commercialisable scale. So we actually have an Australian company that is one of the world's leading companies on quantum encryption, Quintessence Labs. It's an Oz cyber company, so plug and shout out for them. So quantum encryption is already here. When we enter into a quantum world, all of the technologies will catch up, or they'll be on the cutting room floor. There will be a period of time, though, where we have legacy systems that do have to catch up, and that's when we have to absolutely have our eyes on, because the bad guys will be taking advantage of that if we don't have our eyes on. But I do think that it's just that next step change. It's a bit like when, you know, we went from the desktop computer to the laptops. Everything kind of catches up, but there's that lag period that's the most concerning part.
Interesting.
And I guess similarly, it feels like there's multiple ways to try and defend yourself from an attack. So I was just reading recently how Google, out of all of their employees, not one of them has been exposed due to the simplicity of two-factor authentication. And so I wonder if there's mechanisms that could be, you know, analog or potentially, you know, quite mundane or simple in a way that don't have to rely on the sophistication of quantum computing to protect us.
Definitely.
Now, in all of this, we're having this conversation with a set of embedded cultural values. And in countries like China, citizens might not necessarily expect privacy. So how is cybersecurity impacted by ideology?
Significantly. And I think that when we look across the world, it's a bit like humans in the sense that no two countries are actually the same. So whether you're China or you're Vanuatu or you're Estonia or you're Spain or you're Argentina, that's a really good comparison. They're not the same countries. So I think that in the future, technologies that are cyber resilient and are adaptable to each of the different communities and societies that we have globally will be the ones that actually rise above the mega conglomerates that we have today. Sorry, Zuck. So, you know, I think those that can adapt and take account of those cultural norms that exist in local constructs as well as global will the ones that kind of rise up and take advantage of the quantum age.
It's definitely really interesting when we start considering technology and ideology and the divergence and the convergence of the two. I'm really interested in how we can actually utilize technology to enable more humanity. And so there's obviously some fears that feel that are often propelled through science fiction and the media that quickly go to the worst case scenario. But what if these new capabilities could actually unlock new opportunities for us to really tap into our inner humanity, give us more freedom, less time distracted in monotonous things, and more time with each other and connecting with people. And so hopefully in the future, you know, we can have a tech-enabled ideology that really is focused around humanity.
And there's the opportunity to learn from the way technologies are implemented globally as well. I know recently there were some issues with the use of facial recognition technology in order to identify potential criminals. You know, it's something that we're doing here as kind of like an after-the-fact thing. You know, when you go into a stadium, you're getting your face scanned, it gets checked with the database. If there happens to be a riot, you know, you'll probably get pulled up. But in the UK, when they used this and they were actually arresting people, it was largely highly inaccurate and they were arresting the wrong people. So what kind of lessons, you know, can we learn from technologies being globalised like this?
So firstly, to think about it before you deploy it, I think is the best lesson from the UK experience, and think about the different circumstances where they can be most effective, particularly when we're thinking about privacy and why you might have a conviction in the system, to take that example, that might be something that's being reviewed, might actually being contested, or actually has been appealed but not yet taken out of the system. And so you think about all of those kinds of circumstances. Timing is everything in technology. Think about when to deploy. And even if you've decided to deploy the platform on the big games of soccer in the UK, where they've had lots and lots of problems with violence, do you deploy it every time? And do you deploy it at all parts of the game? You know, really thinking through that human benefit, if you like, of applying the technology in different circumstances. And to think about the cultural sensitivities about how you then action and follow up the findings of deploying the technology.
Now, we're talking about technology as an external thing, we're talking about the face, but our minds are like the last frontier when it comes to private domain. So what will happen when we hand it over to a network or we upload it to the cloud? Will we cease to exist as individuals, or are there other ramifications we should be considering too?
Wow. Need a little bit to process that.
But
Just a superficial question here on that startup show.
But this is something that people are already exploring in tech, right? How our minds can interact with technology interfaces.
One of the areas that we've been playing a lot with is the AR cloud, and it's really how content and information is not existing in the ether up there, but actually applying to our physical environment. So as we can see from the two demos we've had before, we've got media and content now having more meaning based on the relationship to the physical space that we share. And so in many ways, it's already happening where we're getting these digital twins of physical environments that are really changing the way that we can interact with these environments. And so you can imagine, obviously, there's some Black Mirror references in there in terms of, cloning your artificial self and the potential implications of the social self that is this already artificial projection that you're putting out there. But I can only imagine what's going to happen when we can actually start, having eye tracking and actually absorbing the same content and information that you are on a daily basis, and the kind of understanding that it can get about you as a user. So we'll see. Hopefully I can live on indefinitely, but I know some people might think a little bit differently to that.
What about you, Michelle? I mean, technology hacking our minds, but what happens when our minds are hacked?
Absolutely. I think if you haven't seen it yet, I strongly recommend watching the movie Anon, which recently came out, which actually goes to what Trent's describing, where you're actually plugging in your eyes and you can see in your eyes all of the different kind of pieces of information that are assigned to people. And it actually demonstrates what happens when it gets hacked. So given that science fiction eventually always comes true, let's learn from the script now and figure out how we actually deal with that in a more human way, thinking that about humanity. And also, I think for all the startups out there, cloud solutions are actually the best way for you to ensure the security of your perimeter. As long as the cloud provider does provide you with assurances around the security of their cloud, and some of the best cloud services in the world, like AWS and Google and Microsoft, are secure in that resilient kind of way. And so the best way that startups can actually get that sort of first initial out-of-the-box kind of assurance there is to be thinking about how the cloud can enable a lot of that mobility and agility in the technology development phases, and think about going to sort of over the horizon. If our minds were hacked, what would you do to respond? How would you actually be able to authenticate whether or not it is real or not? We really do need to start thinking about those issues now and do them in such a big hands way as how they impact on ideologies, as well as right back to how is it going to affect my accessibility to my iPhone in part of how I kind of get onto the socials and get the tram at the right time and all of those kinds of things.
This is terrifying and wonderful. But I do want to know, is it possible in the future that when we physically die, ourselves can live on in some sort of cyber ghost way through virtual reality, augmented reality, some other type of, not real reality? Is it possible? Is it actually possible?
Ghost in the shell.
Yeah. I guess it's really like to how far and to what degree do you really consider it to be yourself, right? So there's these digital artifacts of yourself that would live on. So we see a lot of the content that we're creating in 360 and virtual reality now, which are kind of like memories. They're memories that you can go transport yourself back in time and relive a unique moment. And so one of the things that we try and do is create now, we have the tools to create as many memories as we can. So you can imagine in a way, maybe you forget who you are as a self, maybe you're going through Alzheimer's or dementia. To be able to go back in time and relive one of your fondest memories. It could be your child's wedding, for instance. And so I think that there's some we're already playing in this space now in terms of being able to recreate moments of ourselves and project them into the future. And then as we extend into augmented reality and smart glasses in the future, I think this the amount of data and information that we're constantly feeding off from our environment about our own habits and behaviours, we're only going to be learning more about ourselves. So time will tell.
Well, Trent, what are some of the emerging AR integrations that we're seeing now that will give kids born today a completely different understanding of the world as we know it?
Well, firstly, they seems to be children these days don't have any say at all about what their social media profile is. It's already put up there into the ether before they even can talk or walk. I think some of the new capabilities that we're seeing are actually more around shared experiences. We're actually seeing a new utility that isn't just playing a game on your phone and looking at a screen, but it's actually opening it up into a more spatial environment now. So we can see Sam over there is actually in virtual reality and he's creating art in 3D. And as we can understand, he's doing it in an individual way. But you can imagine as we extend beyond that and we can actually leverage these tools to connect and to collaborate and to co-create and feed into things like education, there's a whole amount of new possibilities for the next generation. They're going to supercharge their minds. So I'm excited to see how that happens.
If VR can feel real, right, and we can all socialise in VR, what's actually stopping it being a better alternative to real life?
Internet speeds?
Oh, yeah.
Just to hit on that
Might
issue.
be a slight speed bump. Speed bump. I'm sorry, but I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
I do think that part of it is actually the infrastructure that we have available to us now.
I love that all your answers are so logical and practical. I need this.
The infrastructure needs to kind of get there a bit better. But, we are staring down the barrel of, the sort of old Moore's Law. Moore's Law is kind of almost going to eat itself at some point, where, the sort of timeframes are becoming in minutes. But the physical infrastructure is still a barrier, absolutely. And we can think about how technology can help us there. I mean, I look at the Pacific and there are island nations right now that don't have any physical infrastructure in place because they are relying on satellite infrastructure for their Wi-Fi, or they're relying on balloons for Wi-Fi. So we can be thinking about these things in different ways, but at the end of the day, there is kind of a sense of finite nature to the infrastructure that we have. We have to solve those problems ourselves. Cyberspace is the only domain of human interaction that we've created ourselves. We've created so many problems in doing that. Of course, but so much opportunity. So I think once we solve that infrastructure problem, then perhaps we really will be facing a situation where the virtual is much more fun and much more engaging than the real. But I think we're also forgetting that there's a thing called nature here as well. Somebody said to me today that there's some work going on at the moment right now in one of our cooperative research centres to replicate the surface of dragonfly wings, because it is the only surface on the planet that we know of that bacteria can't physically grow on.
Oh, wow.
Like, fascinating stuff, right?
Yeah.
The virtual world does not give us that. It literally doesn't give us that. I don't think we're going to get to a time where that changes unless we end the world.
There's a couple of little things, if I could just chime in.
Yeah.
So one thing that's happening now, we touched on a little bit earlier, is there's an awkward point where computer graphics are getting so good, but then they dip into this area of, it's an uncanny valley. Yeah. So you're looking at it and you know it's not quite the real thing. But what we're finding now is some of the new graphics cards are actually able to recreate the same physics and lighting that we perceive with our natural eyes. And so we're about to cross through that threshold and we're about to be at a point where you're not really going to be able to decipher between what is real and what isn't. But I think what's exciting is actually if you can look at it in a way where you can leverage these tools to really help people in really unfavorable, undesirable situations. So for instance, one of the best use cases that we feel virtual reality can provide value is actually taking VR into hospitals. So how can you help people get out of situations that they can't because they're actually physically trapped in a bed for 7 weeks? And so leveraging these tools in a way that you can actually use as an aid for someone that is in a in an awful situation is hopefully a good place that we can start. And if we keep in the back of our mind the implications of addiction that we're already facing with computer games as it stands today, we can hopefully guide our children and the next generation in a good path forward.
Trent, Michelle, thank you so much for that fascinating, optimistic and sometimes chilling conversation. So many questions answered, which I'm sure we've all wondered about as we've sat in front of our evil laptops. We'll be back soon with our third pitch and our panel's final decision on the winner. But first, here's our favourite Alan Jones of all the available ones to tuck you all in.
Oh, hello, founders. I didn't notice you there. Don't you love a good story about the future? I've got a good story about the future too. Would you like to hear it? It's called The 3 Little Startups. Once upon a time, there lived 3 little startups. One day, their mother told them they would have to move out of the bungalow because she was putting it up on Airbnb to avoid being on at them to go through some boxes of old school stuff they never pick up. Anyway, the 3 little startups went off to seek their fortune by creating rival, location-based peer-to-peer shopping recommendation platforms. The first little startup built her location-based peer-to-peer shopping recommendation platform using her credit card and money borrowed from friends. The second little startup built his location-based peer-to-peer shopping recommendation platform on a small business grant and a handshake agreement with a judge on Shark Tank. But the third little startup let their location-based peer-to-peer shopping recommendation platform grow organically, only taking on investors who wanted to take an active role in the company, reinvesting their profits and keeping control of the business. Then one day, the big bad crushing reality came along. The big bad crushing reality got to the first little startup who had a nervous breakdown. The big bad crushing reality also got to the second little startup easily, who went to live in an ashram. But when the big bad crushing reality came for the third little startup, it also got to them because, statistically speaking, over 70% of new businesses fail in the long term. And the moral of the story is that the world doesn't need another location-based peer-to-peer shopping recommendation platform, and that's just the end of that. The end. And now it's time for bed, little founders, and just remember, while you sleep, your rivals may pounce, but you'll ultimately have more staying power because you have a work-life balance. Good night.
Back to our pitch royale. 3 pitchers enter and only 1 pitcher leaves. Actually, they all get to leave, don't get the wrong idea. Our third pitcher is hoping to revolutionise the music industry. The revolution will be decentralised. Please welcome Bobby Aparicha.
What's up, what's up? All right, guys, my name is Bobby and I'm the founder of ValueX. So ValueX is the world's first music artist stock market. Now, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? Well, record labels are the only one currently investing in music artists. It can cost anywhere from $500,000 to $2 million to actually launch an artist's music career. Now, for this reason, it's really difficult to break into the music industry. That's why you see thousands of artists going to auditions, X Factor, Australia Got Talent, America's Got Talent. I'm an artist myself, and I understand how hard it can be to break into the music industry. So, what is the solution? A stock market, where all artists can list themselves, and anyone like you and I can invest in them. So essentially, you can earn money from listening to music and invest in an artist. You can discover local and international artists, invest in them, buy, sell their shares, trade their stocks in the stock market, and you can share in the revenue they generate as an artist. Now, there are more than 8 million artists out there searching for record deals. Sounds pretty crazy. Record labels like Universal, Sony, they can't sign every single artist on the planet. But on ValueX, we can list 100% of artists. Now, in terms of scalability, if we listed 2 million artists, how we make money, we charge little transaction fees on the trades that's taking place, and the artists a listing fee. Now, at $250, 2 million artists, we can generate $1 billion if we listed 2 million artists. Now, I'm here today because if there's an artist out there in the audience or people that you know that would like to actually join our platform as an artist get listed, or if there's investors out there that want to own a piece of our project, please get in touch with us at ValueX. But right now, I'd like to show you why you need to invest in me. Are we ready to party? Let's get it. All right. So we're going to start with the chorus. All right. So when I say I get it, I count it, y'all scream out, I spend it. All right. I get it, I count it. We'll do it one more time. I get it, I count it. Cause when they hear my sound, everybody know me. Now I'm coming back, we can smoke the victory. Yeah, we get high every night's on duty. They gon' see us pass out like we got duty free. Yeah, I know I sound like I'm disturbing the peace, but you already know that I come in peace. And everybody see me as the leader of, cause we weigh money leader of dollars. Cause I get it, I count it. Thanks for listening to me today, guys.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you.
Let's start with you, Michelle. Any questions for Bobby about ValueX?
Okay. So, Bobby, the only question I can think of really to ask you is what kind of criteria do you have in place to kind of vet the performers going onto the platform? So they're not a bit crap. You know?
Well, we want to give opportunities to everybody out there, right? We've seen like anyone could be super talented or anyone's career can actually take off with a bit more experience in the industry. So we give everyone the opportunity, really.
What about you, Trent? Any questions for Bobby about ValueX?
Beyond where's your next performance, where can I find you? I'm really
All my
intrigued.
stock prices?
What sort of markets are you really planning to start in? So do you have any customers here in Melbourne, for instance?
Yeah, so we've got a lady called Lady Frank. She's listed with us and she will be on our platform. And in terms of where you can find me, you asked your question before, I go by the name Bobby K9. Check me out on Facebook or, yeah. And in terms of our target market is actually independent artists. Because these are the guys really going out there. They need the money to actually get into the music industry because it's really expensive. So that will be what we'll be targeting out there. And of course, all artists are welcome. Even if you're a signed artist, you can still get listed on the platform.
Would you please thank Bobby, everybody?
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
3 pitches, but only one will make it through to the grand finale. While the judges are working out whether they'll spin in their chairs, let's check in with Sarah and see what reality we have on the floor.
Thanks, Ben. Well, look, I was trying to build a whole new world, and I've kind of got myself in a bit over my head. We have war of the worlds going on here between augmented reality and virtual reality. Now, what we're building, we've got all the bits going on, and it's starting to be a bit overwhelming. I may have ended up on the darkest timeline, but I'm trying to work out what's happening. We've got computers are growing out of everywhere in both spaces, and it's very intimidating. To be honest, I think I'm going to have to throw it back to you, Hostbusters.
Oh dear, Sarah. Hope you're okay. Reality seems untroubled here.
Okay, it's judgment time. Who most transformed your reality? Trent and Michelle?
Yeah, well, before I begin, firstly, amazing congratulations to the 3 of you gentlemen. It takes a lot of courage to get up on that stage and pitch. I've definitely been there, let alone rap on that stage. That's next level. I think it really came down to 2 really weighing decisions around the business opportunity and traction to date, and then beyond that in terms of the real overall impact that we believe this technology could have on society.
And so the winner is this week, Ben from Fair Access. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Ben. You're through to the grand finale where there are some huge prizes up for grabs, including the street cred you may or may not have. That's up to the judges.
And that is all we have time for, as we have other realities to return to. Please thank our panel, Michelle and Trent. Thank you. And of course, our fantastic pitchers.
Join us next time as we take a look at the kind-hearted world of goodie tech. Can you make a difference and make a profit?
Isn't that what that startup show is all about?
You're getting paid.
See you next time.
Well, Ben, you walked through the hot coals of the pitch fire. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I'm feeling really good.
And were you feeling less good beforehand? Do you feel better after, or?
Feeling a little bit nervous beforehand, but I feel really good now.
Did you appreciate the feedback that you got?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's quite good feedback. I mean, and in terms of the questions was really good because we actually spent quite time to think about them.
And what's next on your agenda now? I mean, you know, you can relax.
So next on the agenda, we're off to Shanghai we'll be presenting to Alibaba. After just a couple of days ago, we won the Alibaba Startup Contest, the People's Choice Award, and the Startup Victoria Award. So we'll be heading over to Shanghai to actually present ValueX over there.